Well, welcome. We'll kind of ease into the start to allow a few more people to join us here before we launch into our topic. I'm Beth Schaefer. I'm the director of the Institute for Professional Development at Metropolitan State University. Special greeting to my Metro State colleagues that are joining us today, but do know that this is not a Metro State only event. We have others from other organizations joining us today as well. IPD, Institute for Professional Development, is the continuing ed customized training arm of the university, and we're happy to sponsor the monthly expert insight sessions for you. I do want to let you know that we are recording today's session, so be aware of that when you're entering things into chat or raising your hand, contributing, or if you want nothing to do with that, now is your time to bail out and just go have lunch on your own. So you've been warned. We're excited to bring you the topic of problem solving today. And I'm going to get us going by sharing our unscientific poll that we took. Several of you may have taken part in this survey that we put out. Just two questions. The first question is, I got to get my face out of the way here. Sorry, there we go. My first question was, select the biggest obstacle that prevents you from solving workplace problems. You can see the graph on the screen with the results, and I think you can. Yep. And I thought it was interesting. I'm not surprised by lack of communication at 30% and silos at 39%. But they were really high, and the two of them together almost 70%. And I kind of clumping them together because they're kind of chicken and egg, right? Do silos lead to lack of communication, or does lack of communication lead to the silos? But they seem to always kind of go hand in hand. So it's interesting that those two things score so high compared to anything else that prevents us from solving problems. The only other thing I will note on this slide is the other at 9%. The two main answers that fell into the other category, the first one was all, meaning they couldn't pick between the four items we provided. They were all part of their problem. And the other one was leadership. So leadership in terms of not engaging, not wanting to engage in helping to solve problems. Leadership in terms of not endorsing solutions. So when teams came up with solutions, leadership didn't necessarily hop in and give their support behind it. Or leadership in terms of lack of decision-making, that solutions were presented, but leadership kind of hummed and hawed and didn't make decisions. So I'm not sure if we had added leadership as an original choice, that may have scored higher than other things, but we'll never know because it's unscientific and informal. But screen number 2 here has better positive information. So the second item was, this obstacle is within my power to solve. And I was really excited to see that 55% of you landed on an agree answer, strongly agree, or somewhat agree. I was encouraged by that means people feel like they have some influence on the obstacles. And I'm going to, again, because this is informal, add in a little bit on the somewhat disagree people could really also be somewhat agree people, two sides of the same coin, which brings us up to 61%. So 61% of you feel that you can influence. So I am confident that you will learn something today from Christine to aid you in your problem solving endeavors. So welcome to the webinar. We will take questions throughout, so you can put them in the Q&A, which leaves you anonymous, or you can throw them in the chat. Christine and I will both do our best to monitor both of those options as we go along today. Let me do an introduction of Christine Moore. Christine and I started working together over 10 years ago now. It's hard to say. Christine started her career in IT and then moved on to project management. She has a PMP, Project Management Professional certification from PMI, the Project Management Institute. She is also a certified facilitator, which means she's really good at gathering stakeholder feedback and input on either projects or process improvement and problem solving, which has taken her into that new domain now of problem solving and process improvement, continuous improvement, whatever your title for that is. She's a great fit for the Institute of Professional Development, since our leadership philosophy is that we like to provide people with concrete tools for the work they do, but also encourage them and coach them on how to make sure they're listening to the people around them and gathering the correct input. So that mix of people and tools is one that we like to see and use. Christine teaches some of our most popular courses, including Leading Through Conflict, Adopt a Coaching Approach, and the critical success factors for being a good delegator. And with that, I welcome Christine.
Hey, thanks, Beth. And hello, everyone. I'm going to get my screen shared here, which, you know, if you do this any amount of time, you should be able to talk and do that at the same time. But I don't know, sometimes I find it hard. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here for the IPD webinar. I think it's a really great monthly program. I encourage you to tune in because Beth has always got some fun stuff and very pertinent stuff. Very helpful for anyone. So we're here today specifically to talk about problem solving, but more specifically, because that's a huge topic, is to think about whether we're fixing or solving. And that is kind of, I hope I got you thinking a little bit about what that difference might be. Now this webinar is based on content from a full workshop that we do, and Beth will tell you more about that at the end of our conversation. But hopefully you can see my screen right now. If not, please let me know. I am monitoring chat. And like Beth said, she is also monitoring. And I will ask for all of you to chime in on chat at different times in the presentation. So, all right, I'm also going to open up my participant window. Great, now I can see all of your names. So problem solving is one of my favorite topics. I didn't start there, but I got pulled into it by my client base when I was running large projects. And so we were part of that whole group in the 90s who was really starting to get into continuous improvement. And so that's where I'm kind of aiming today, is this idea in general of problem solving, but thinking about all of the things that trip people up that I've seen. You know, there's this idea of, are you fixing it or are you solving it? And so that's where we're going to go. We're going to start in kind of a strange way. We're going to start with actually doing a poll. It's really easy for you to do this. You just have to do it on the web. You can do it on your smartphone if you have it, or in another window on your computer. And this is basically what you do. You go ahead and join by going to poll, POLLEV.com. And when you get there, it's going to ask you for a username, and you enter Christine, MOO063. Doesn't have to be in caps like it shows on the screen. And you're going to answer the question, what's another word for a problem? And as you start to answer that, you can answer as many times as you want. We will start to see an issue is the first one that came up, which is awesome. So now that I know that you're there, most of you, good. I'm going to show you the results of this poll as we go forward. But I'm going to let it evolve a little bit to make sure you can all get there. Again, it's pollev.com. Your username is Christine, MOO063, and then you will see this problem. So I'm going to stop sharing and do a different share so that you can actually see all of the results. And let's try do that. So hopefully you can see what the group thinks. We've got 29 of you have at least 29, I don't know if it's different people, but different ideas on what a problem is. All right. And if you're not seeing the word picture that I have up, please somebody let me know in the chat. And I'm going to let it go for a little bit. We're up to 38. So people are voting probably multiple times, which is awesome. Challenge, opportunity. And you can see, of course, what happens is if the more people put in the same word like opportunity or challenge or issue, the word gets bigger. And I'm going to let this go just another few seconds here before I close it off. A wicket, trouble, sticky, incident, underlying. That's interesting. Misunderstanding, situation, contradiction. That's insightful. Improvement, complication, dispute. Good words. Awesome. I hope you're enjoying that. It's kind of fun. In fact, I'm glad we're recording this because it'll be fun to keep this. All right, I am going to lock that up. So I'm going to stop sharing that and lock that up and get back to sharing what, I'll get back to sharing my, so thank you for doing that. And I will lock that. We're going to do that again a couple more times. It's still going. I love it. But challenge, issue, and opportunity are still the biggest. All right, I'm going to lock that up so you won't be tempted. And now that you know where to go, we'll do that a couple more times. And then, so contradiction, misunderstanding, crisis, underlying, dilemma, dispute, all really good words. So I'd like to know now what kind of problems you face at work. And for this one, I'd like you to actually put it in the chat. Be as brief as you can, put them in the chat. We can all see it. What kind of problems do you face at work? Let's see what we get here. Complaints about policies and procedures, budget, personalities, unbalanced work assignments for our team, miscommunication, conflict, some of the same words coming up for another word for problem, right? Time crunches, inherited expectations, tag you're it, right? Projects with unclear success criteria or expectations, absolutely. Not being asked for solutions from leadership, lack of capacity for big ideas, working through the grind, assumptions made without communicating first, stretched like butter over too much bread, which sort of sounds heavenly at lunch. Projects that define a solution, not the problem to be solved. So Jason, that is one of the big reasons that we're doing this webinar. That's really the topic. A lot of the topic here is about defining solutions instead of problems. We're going to cover that. It's a big deal. There's lots of ways we get started poorly in problem solving, and that is one of them. So thank you for those. Awesome. All right, so we're going to move on. So basically, there is a difference, just as Jason said, and a couple other alluded to, between a problem and a solution. And we sometimes forget that when we're in the heat of it. In fact, I can prove this. Have you ever been in a situation where there's a problem and someone's asking you, probably because they really need the problem to be gone? They're saying, what's the problem? And what they're really asking is, what are you going to do about it? What's the solution? They aren't really asking a lot of times what the problem is. So the idea being that a problem and a solution are two different things, and how those things relate to each other and how we get there is what we're here to talk about. So we're going to say that a problem is a situation preventing something from being achieved. I loved all the words that you said: issue, error, dilemma, dispute, because all of those things could prevent something from being achieved. The means of solving a problem is called a solution, right? So what I like to know now is, how is solving different than fixing in your mind? What might I be poking at to call this, fixing or solving in the webinar? Go ahead and respond in the chat or raise your hand if you'd like to talk, and we will definitely let you speak. So solving is permanent, fixing is a Band-Aid. Permanent versus temporary. Good. Yeah, that is part of it. Absolutely. There's other things. What else? Address the root cause, not just the current situation. Yes. Good. Fixing is short term, solving is long term. Awesome. All right. I like those. Let me go a little bit further. Yeah, a lot of you are keying in on that. Getting to the idea of putting a Band-Aid on it, or fixing is like something temporary, where solving is more long-term. And that is what we're kind of poking at here. How do we do that? And why do we not a lot of times? Solving is more collaborative, involves the stakeholders. Yes. Well, and doesn't that make sense? Because if you don't actually solve it, if you jump to a solution, stakeholders tend to not like that or not buy in. Solving likely includes many people and buying in. Good. All right. So we're on the right track here. So I had this next slide, which is fix versus solution. And that's what you're kind of giving me here. So I'm going to go one slide further. This is just an overview. The way, when you fix something, I liked the mention of a Band-Aid. The problem is really likely to come back. And so sometimes we fix it, we think we've solved it. And then in the next cycle, whether that be the next time this kind of thing comes up, or it might be the next quarter if you're in a financial role, or it might be seasonally the next year, or it might be just the next time this process runs, it's going to come back. And a solution keeps it solved. Now, granted, the world changes, and even really sustainable solutions we need to keep them sustainable. But what we're trying to do is eliminate the problem, keep it solved. And again, just as you said in your chat, a fix is really focused on immediate results, where a solution is more permanent. We're looking longer term. A fix is also aimed at symptoms a lot, and then we feel like the problem's solved because we get some relief from the symptoms, whereas a solution is aimed at the cause and finding out what that is. One of the people said here, the root cause is. And that's really this big difference between fix and solution. One is not systemic. It's not going to stay. It doesn't get at the systemic thing that's wrong. Whereas a solution, we are trying to get to the systemic root. In the manufacturing world, and I don't know if there's anyone online today from manufacturing, but in the manufacturing world, we have a name for a fix as part of problem solving. Getting a quick fix in is something we call containment. And we do this in also in business process, right? So sometimes we may try and just get it, alleviate the pain, get a quick fix in, and we contain what's the symptoms that are happening. But then we have to continue the process and get to that systemic reason it's happening. So sometimes, unfortunately, our containment becomes our solution because the pressure's off for a moment. And it's hard when the pressure's off to keep that permanent solving process a priority. And so we find this, if you walk into a manufacturing plant, you can see evidence that there's containment, things that have happened all over in business process. We see it all over, all the workarounds that we do, or the extra checks, or the adjustments to our workflow for a crisis that happened. When those things stay in place, they cover up potentially a systemic issue. So we really want to think about how we get to a solution rather than a fix. Now, one thing about these webinars, and I get really tired of hearing myself talk, and I feel like I ramble. So I think I got that point across, but I'd love to hear in the chat anybody that has something else to say about fix or solution, or also raise your hand if you would like to contribute to underscore, say it differently, this idea of a fix versus a solution. The more interactive, I think, the better for everyone. If I see Beth and I see hands go up, we will pause to do that. All right, so now sometimes, the politically correct thing is to say, oh, it's not a problem, it's an opportunity. Yes and no, right? I mean, something is both. If you look at a problem solved is an opportunity to avoid that pain or that cost, whether it be cash, capital, people's time, that the problem is sucking up. So absolutely, all problems are opportunities, but not because it's a politically correct thing to say. I hate to think that we stop saying the word problem when something actually is, but they are, but solving them can be a huge opportunity, and we know that. And so with that said, we're going to look at some different kinds of problems on a little chart that I have, because there are so many kinds. And this is just one way to look at it. And this is kind of the complexity of the problem and then the time to resolve. And it's not perfect. This chart isn't perfect. But what we're kind of trying to get at here is there's this idea of troubleshooting, which is kind of gets into that fix mentality of, quick fixes, immediate relief. Generally, those don't take a lot of time, and the complexity of the problem, or maybe the complexity of what we're going to do about it, is low. But as we go up this arrow here, then there is the gap from standard. And that means that we have an expectation, as someone said in the chat really well, and it's not being met. It could be an internal organization expectation that's not being met. It could be a customer external to the organization. It could be your boss. It could be you. It could be some expectations not being met. And so there's some standard that we're supposed to be achieving that isn't. And so we do a root cause analysis to close the gap, right? Now, if we move up a little bit further to this idea of improvement, this could be that there isn't necessarily a gap from standard, but because we're future oriented, we have some kind of a stretch target, we want to actually take the status quo right now and we want to improve upon it. And we call those improvements. And then finally on our scale here is a breakthrough. This is huge. This is breakthrough solutions and results. So these are not incremental future. This is sort of ideal state stuff. And this magnet, pulls us like a magnet up this chain here. I'm pausing for a second to look at the chat here. Fixing might be solved on your feet, quick. Decision involving may take time, needs to look at different systems processes, may need testing. Good, like that, Debbie. Thank you for contributing that. So as we move up these are kind of different kinds of problems in terms of their time to resolve and their complexity. So where the line kind of gets crossed here for root cause is right after troubleshooting. So when we start trying to actually systemically solve a problem, a gap from standard where we need some kind of analysis to understand what's truly going on, and with an improvement. If we want to improve something, we have to truly get at the root of what causes the things we're seeing, and breakthrough as well. We have to really understand what's going on. We are focusing above that red line. And more importantly, today, we're going to really focus right here on this gap from standard, because that is where we find a lot of challenges in our organizations. Some of the things you talked about, the kinds of problems where I saw some business process ones in there. And I also saw some, complaints, procedures, policies, how these things work may not be serving us well any longer, right? There may be some where it's harder to get the results we need, those kinds of things. So that's where we're going to kind of focus. But it's important to note that above that red line, all of those require systemic change, systemic solutions, sustainable, which means we have to get at the root cause. So the difference here is instead of troubleshooting, we're going to use problem solving. And, there are quite a lot of problem solving methodologies out there. Excuse me. And I'd love to hear in the chat if anyone has been involved and used any kind of formal problem solving. I'd love to see it in the chat, even if it's as straightforward as just, oh, I understand plan, do, check, act, or yeah, I know the DMAIC process, or yeah, I use A3 or 8D. If you don't know what those things are, no problem. But for those who do know what those things are, it'd be interesting for me. Kaizen, yeah, okay. And Kaizen is just is a fast improvement, absolutely. And we can the 3 C's. And okay, yes, I get that. That's somebody who has been part of Metro State before. Awesome. So 5 whys. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, the 5 whys, which I think there's a whole generation of consultants that sold that idea. Just ask why 5 times and you get to that. Unfortunately, 5 why is way harder than that if we're going to do it well. So if you're interested in the 5 whys, go out and research it a bit, because asking why 5 times means you're getting closer and closer to the root cause. Whereas many times people ask why 5 times just to get to the answer that they want. So be careful of 5 why. I would encourage you to look at Ishikawa or Fishbone as maybe an alternative or a partner in that. But these are great. This is what we're here to talk about. So I didn't want to use any particular religion in doing this. I just wanted to go, hey, here's the steps. And so if you've done a 5 why, if you've gone through a Kaizen, if you've used PDCA or any of the other ones I mentioned, you'll recognize this. This is just really basic, but it's also detailed. So what we're looking at is that problem solving is the act of doing these things, clarifying the problem, exploring it, analyzing it, identifying countermeasures, which we will define in a moment, trying those countermeasures, checking our results, defining a solution, and then implementing it. Sustainable problem solving must include all of these, regardless of what you call them. It doesn't matter what we call them. So we're going to kind of take a high level look at this. We can't get into a ton of detail because, of course, it is a webinar. And I'm going to show you this exact same list, but in another format on my next slide here. And this is showing, well, this is a step, for example, clarifying. How do we do that? And then what's the output of that step in terms of making progress in our problem solving? And you can see that here. So I'm going to run through this at a high level, and then we're going to jump into it a little bit more detail. And I'm going to continually monitor in case anybody's hand is up or if anybody has something to say in the chat. So in step 1, we're clarifying the problem by creating a problem definition. Incredibly important. Incredibly important. If we're not on the same page as to what the problem is or isn't, and the scope of that problem, not the solution, but the problem, if we have a group of people and they're not on the same page, we are going to run in completely different directions. And the rest of the process isn't going to work for us. It's like the foundation of a house. If there's a crack in the problem definition and what we're focusing on, we may get to a solution, we may not get to a solution, or we may get to a solution that doesn't actually do anything. And so this idea of clarifying by creating a problem definition is first. Also, it's iterative. I've never seen somebody be able to sit down and just whip out a problem definition without some thought and some scoping of it. And so this will potentially take some time to do. Then we get into exploring and documenting. And this is because we want to start thinking about what possibly could be causing, not what we think is caused, but what could be. So that takes exploring what's the processes around our problem, the circumstances, the situations, when it occurs, when it doesn't occur, where it occurs, where it doesn't occur, the process behind it, because we're trying to understand it in a way. Is that? No, it's not. Try to understand it in a way that allows us to probe deeper. So we're trying to get a list of potential causes. Then we get into analyzing it to get to a few probable causes. So we're going to actually go through, I'm going to stop there because we're going to see this slide again, but I wanted to get through those first couple. And then we're going to kind of walk through this and say, okay, so if I don't do each of these, I'm going to end up somewhere that isn't sustainable. And I'm going to show you how we go about that. Now, something that isn't mentioned on here that is sort of assumed is this, and that is engaging the right people. We call them stakeholders. In this, who we engage in helping solve a problem has a huge impact on the outcome, right? And you saw in the survey that Beth did that 39% of the people that responded to that survey said that silos were a problem. And this makes a lot of sense to me because we tend to try and solve problems in a silo and look at the people in our area rather than looking at a process that generates our problem that could go cross-functionally. And so we can't look at the reporting structure alone to think about who we have to engage. We have to look at how the problem flows through the organization, or how the process that creates the problem flows through the organization. And so to do that from a problem solving, here's some things you can do. Think about the stakeholders for your problem as being, in the stakeholder I define as, we're defining here as anyone who could be affected by the successful solving of this problem. And they all are also affected by the problem itself. So in order to identify these people, or even these departments, these silos, you can ask yourself, all right, we don't know what the solution is yet, but can we imagine when it's done, whatever our solution is, who's going to use it? Because anybody who is impacted because they use this solution, they're a stakeholder. And we better get them involved now. And who's going to create it? Who's going to help us figure it out? Who are those people that are subject matter experts in this area? And then who's going to verify it? When we have a solution, who's going to say, yeah, that works? And then who's going to own it when we're done, and who's going to support it? Anyone or any group that falls into this are stakeholders. That does not mean they all have to be on your team, but it does mean that you're casting your net wide to make sure you're getting at people who you may want to include. And for sure, at some point along the way, you'll want to. So first, engage the right people prior to getting into our problem-solving steps. So step one, we said, was defining the problem. This is one of my very favorite Einstein quotes. I love Einstein. He's smart and funny. So he said, if I had an hour to solve a problem, I'd spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and only 5 minutes thinking about solutions. This is where we're driving to today. And when he says thinking about it, he doesn't just mean defining it, but not allowing ourselves to jump to a solution, really truly defining and exploring the problem. So I thought I'd put together a slide of this idea of defining problems and the three components. There could be more. The basic components that a problem definition needs. If you are writing a problem statement, hopefully you're writing it not alone, but with other people who are stakeholders. The first thing is, what is happening? So describing the situation. And when you're describing it, you're keeping out no opinion or belief, no exaggerating. It's just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. And then the comparison between what is happening and what should be happening. That gets into that gap analysis that we're trying to understand here. And then what is the resulting impact? So this is what's happening. We need to close our financial books at the end of the quarterly books by the first week of the quarter. That's what's happening, is that they are not getting closed till the third week of the quarter. The impact is we're late on checks. We have people are working a ton of overtime. This is an example. So it's not just what's happening, but that resulting impact. Your problem statement needs to have those three things in it in order to describe the context of the problem. And it's really difficult if you think you know the answer, you think you know what's going on. It's difficult not to include a root cause. We think this is happening because, no, that's not a problem statement. So-and-so believes what we want to try first is none of those things are problem statements. All of those things are for further down the road, but they're not for now. So staying focused on the facts, not making it too long. And then something I mentioned earlier, that it is an iterative process. Your understanding and your team's understanding, or if you have just a couple of people working on this, it's going to evolve as you go through the problem solving process. And so as your understanding evolves, the problem statement is going to get stronger. And so you investigate and learn, and you roll that learning back into the problem statement. So I would love to hear from anyone in chat about this. Generally speaking, people who are in problem solving encounter problem statements that have these things in them, and they kind of rob the team's ability to go solve the problem because it's biased, right? And we're trying to start from just the facts type of situation. Is there anyone out here that has other things you'd add to pitfalls inside in terms of writing a problem statement, or any other experiences that you may have? And I'm looking at the chat and just making sure. All right, no? Well, my guess is you're thinking about them as you eat your lunch. All right, so I'm going to get back to where we are in this process, is clarifying the problem by writing a problem definition. And the next thing then, our step 2, is to explore the problem. Once we have a clear definition, or we think it's clear anyway, then we want to move on to exploring and documenting. As I said earlier, what we're driving to here, the output of this step, is trying to get a list of potential causes. So what I would like to do is ask you, what can you do to explore a problem? When I say explore and document, so let's say you've got a good problem definition, you think you've got the right stakeholders involved, and you want to explore the problem. Tell me some things you do. How do you explore a problem? What does that look like? In the chat, or raise your hand. Focus groups with stakeholders. Absolutely, Sarah. Recreate the problem. Yes, this is critical and technical support. Absolutely. Ask questions to the stakeholders. Yes. Good answers, really good answers. Recreating the problem, watching the problem, whether you're in an IT world, as tech support is a great example of this. You're in a manufacturing world, you're following a business process. That is a great way to do it. If you're only thinking about the problem from inside a conference room, you're missing it, right? You got to go see it. Even if it is in the computer system, first I push this button and then it gets sent over there. Walk the process, that's generating the problem. Ask people, even if in these different silos, what does the problem look like from your side? Because people from different organizations may experience the problem differently. Compare performance measures with outside similar agencies. Awesome. So if it's a process, try and diagram the current process. Good answers. So compare performance measures with outside similar agencies. That can be benchmarking. And absolutely, there are some processes that we run in our organizations that a lot of organizations run, even in the same industries. So we can do some benchmarking. Good answers. Thank you for that. Here's a couple I came up with. You did this as well. Go and see. That means walk the process, even if it's mentally. And sometimes that means getting stakeholders together and thinking through each step of the process. I love using Post-it notes on the wall to do this, trying to create a process map. If you're really sophisticated, you can get very detailed with the process map and get down to all the inputs and the outputs of each step in your process. You can keep it high level. What are the big steps that people do and who gets involved in those? And that's going to help you also open the door to more stakeholders, right? You're going to get into it and go, oh, that's right. I didn't even think that department was involved, but you know what? They do have something to do with this. Let's go talk to them. Existing documentation, policies, procedures. What does it say out there? Like what's documented right now? And can those be of help to us, or are they outdated? And then one of the things we do that's incredibly important at this point in problem solving is brainstorm. And brainstorm not as in just new ideas, but as in not ideas as to how to solve it. We're not there yet, but ideas about what could be causing it. Right? So what's going on here? Here's our process map. What are some ideas? This is where the idea of the 5 why can come into that somebody brought up. This is that where a fishbone diagram, this is where you can, think about what potentially is out there, potentially that could be causing this. So with that, I would like to do another poll. I would like to know, because we're talking about exploring and keeping ideas open and getting people together to brainstorm, I'd like you to tell me what is key to brainstorming. Now I'm going to go open up another poll. It says this: what is key to brainstorming? I'm going to activate it, show responses. And so you can go out there, same place you were before. If you're on that web page, you'll get this, it should be in the same place. And I'm going to say it one more time: pollev.com, Christine, MOO063. So I'm going to actually show you what I am seeing. Share screen. And I'm going to make that a full screen. And hopefully you can see what I'm seeing. Active listening, time, individual thinking time, open-minded, having an open mind, no judgment, consider all comments, creativity, blue sky thinking, no wrong answers, it's good ones. You need time, absolutely. Active listening, having an open mind. Yeah, the whole idea of brainstorming, right, is to go from, oops, you're not seeing my screen. Sorry about that. Thank you, Beth. Stop sharing. Maybe I just did the wrong one. Give me a moment. All right, that should do it. There we go. Sorry about that. I'll scroll. So blue sky thinking, creativity, no judgment, consider all comments, having an open mind, individual thinking time, many ideas from many people. So who we get together to brainstorm what the potential causes of a problem could be is important, which is why we do that stakeholder. Set up the givens really well. Yeah, okay, so we know this is happening, this is happening, this is happening. So with these givens, what are the potential causes of our problem? Good answers. Have fun, build on each other's ideas. Yes. Facilitate responses from all participants. Good. Engage everyone different. Engage everyone, especially people from different perspectives. Positive atmosphere. Yes, state the obvious to flesh out more complex ideas. Sometimes we don't do that, do we? We jump into complexity. Let's get the obvious things out there. It's good. All right, way to go. All right, so that's what we mean by brainstorming. So notice that we aren't talking solutions. We haven't said anything about solutions. We've said only so far about what the potential problems could be. So I'm going to come back to my presentation here. Thank you for that. And I'm going to show you this screen. So I think this is one of the big problems in problem solving. And this is what mostly we wanted to talk about today, that these first 2 steps in problem solving are what we call divergent thinking. That means we have to keep an open mind. And it's really hard to do that when people are pressuring for a solution because the problem's having a big impact, right? So this idea of divergent thinking is incredibly important. And the best example of divergent thinking is the things you just put in the poll. Keeping an open mind, not getting frustrated with or jumping to conclusions. So the problem is that doesn't solve anything, right? It gives us a list of potential causes. So now we have to go back down and narrow the possibilities, right? And so where do we start? When we have, I'm going to close that poll. I forgot to do that. When we have a whole bunch of brainstorm ideas, and I've seen this so often, it can be kind of overwhelming. So we have to use some kind of a method or a tool to narrow down these potential causes to things that we think are most likely part of a root cause, where we at least start there. So some methods are getting the stakeholders to rank them as to where they want to start. Something called a cause and effect analysis, incredibly helpful. That's more complex, but you can Google it. It's a really powerful tool. Or sometimes we just start with the easiest to test it. And then maybe there's others. The point is that we are now changing our thought process to be convergent and narrowing. And so that difference, going from divergent and open-mindedness to narrowing to get to a few probable causes, is a really important step in problem solving. So here is this is not for you to do right now, but I am going to take this link and I'm also going to put it into the chat. I would encourage you to go watch this video. It's fun, it's easy. It's a great video on divergent and convergent thinking. And it specifically has to do, in this case, with problem solving, but it can be applied in a bigger context. We don't have time to watch it here, but that is where I'd like you to go at some point if you're looking into this. So let's say we've done that. We've brainstormed a bunch of ideas and we've narrowed them down to what we think could be the root causes. We have some high probability ones from our own perspective. Our analysis has showed us, our subject matter experts, have thought that we think we know. So how do we know when we actually get there? I'd love to have somebody tell me this. How do you know when we have found the root cause or causes, because there's not usually just one, of a problem? Anybody out there wants to put that in the chat. How do you know when you get there? What do you think? And I'm not seeing my participants. People get excited. Yes, but how do they know you got it? That's true, Debbie. But what are they getting excited about? Everyone agrees, okay? So is it a thought exercise? So we think we know what it is, yay. This is a really important point. And this is where a lot of problem solving organizations falls short. And I'm gonna give you the punchline. When we can prove it with results, good ideas don't solve problems. Actual changes solve problems. We know we've gotten there when we have an idea and we try it and we check our results and we can prove it. And that is the very gritty, hard truth about problem solving and why a lot of people never get there. It's kind of my, here's the idea behind true problem solving. We have all these ideas out there, but then we have to take them and take the one we're excited about, everyone agrees to, and come up with an hypothesis, which is simply an informed guess made on the basis of all the work we've done so far. And then that hypothesis is, okay, well, if this hypothesis is true, then we can do these things, and here's the effect they should have. Those things that we're going to go do are called countermeasures, as in they're measures we take to counter the problem. And when we have a hypothesis and we do a countermeasure and it works, we've gotten to root cause. Then we have to make it permanent, right? But a lot of times we stop because the idea is exciting and we don't actually prove it. Many organizations do lots of analysis, create fancy reports and solutions, but they never get implemented. Yes, Julie, and I would say even before that, they never get implemented, but that's incredibly important. But even before that, they don't actually try the idea. So we got to try it. It's got to work. And then we have to permanently implement. So let's go look at a little bit more here. And we're going to end here in about 5 minutes. So I'm going to get through these, but this is the punchline. So I've now got there's 3 steps in our process, 4, 5, and 6, which are about trying and then checking to find root cause. So we have a hypothesis and we have an action. I'm going to go try these things. We're not done. We go test them. We test our hypotheses. We try the countermeasure. We do that so we get some results. And then we check the results and compare it to our hypotheses and what our target is. And if we made it, yay, we're still not done, but now we can celebrate. Sometimes we don't actually we don't get the exact results we want, but we learn something. And so we adjust our countermeasure and we try again. So 4, 5, and 6, this process can cycle. And we learn each time. What we want to get to eventually is we have to get to 7 and 8 here, which is about taking these countermeasures and incorporating them into a permanent solution. And I'm going to go one step further here. Here's the full thing. So having a countermeasure, being able to take the countermeasure, it works. We've got to root cause, because the true test of root cause, by the way, is you can turn the problem on and off. That's not always possible, but we know that we put this in place and we got the results we wanted. This is root cause. Now we have to make that permanent. That means maybe has to be training on the procedure, whatever this is. Maybe there has to be getting leadership buy-in to that. Maybe we have to spend some money. Any of the things that we need to do to make these countermeasures part of our permanent process. That's what we mean by sustainable. Being able to put a solution in place and then monitor it to make sure it stays there. So this is true problem solving, getting to root cause analysis and the steps that are in it. I am going to show you one more slide here, which is where Beth started, and say, hey, you know what? Think about this. If we got the right people involved doing some kind of a stakeholder analysis, then that would help us bust the silos, right? If we thought more long-term by getting past quick fixes, that would help problem solving. The disinterest, that also is about getting the stakeholders involved that truly are affected. And the lack of communication, well, if we actually communicated the process we were using to solve the problem, a lot of that lack of communication goes away. So that's kind of how we tie all of this together. Now, I would like to open it for just a couple minutes here with questions or comments. Go ahead and raise your hand or put it in the chat. Would love to spend a couple minutes before I leave Beth, a few minutes at the end. Questions, comments from anyone? I don't see any hands up. I would love to see some questions about problem solving, comments, your own experience, anything, something I've said that you go, yeah, I don't buy that, which I hope you would tell me so we can have a discussion about it. Or yeah, I've had that experience myself, but slightly different. So we've gotten to the point in the webinar where I feel like I should stand up and dance. Can you put up slide 7 of step 8? Can you put up slide 7 and 8? This one, you got it. That one, I hope that's the right one. What else?
Well, folks may be typing. I'll share that a couple of takeaways for me today was that to keep in mind that problem statements can be iterative and evolving. I guess I hadn't thought of that. And so to keep that in mind, because when you're in the thick of problem solving, it's so easy to fall into all of those in the weeds, in those pitfalls.
Absolutely.
We do have a question on the Q&A. How do you convince people to go through a process like this when everyone wants to jump to the solution?
Oh, that is the question of that's the question of the day. I do a lot of coaching in problem solving, and I'll give you some keys, I think. One is to be able to explain the process you're going through and why each step is important. And that if we truly want a sustainable solution, skipping any of these steps will make it will take us longer. This is actually the most efficient way to a solution. And there is a ton of evidence to say that. So first is invoke people, invoke history, and that every one of these steps is there for a reason, and that it is the fastest way, unless we don't want it to be sustainable. We don't want to include the right people. We want it to come back. We want to fix it sort of, or fix the wrong problem. These are the trade-offs. So that's one of the things. The other is get leadership in your organization involved in how do they go about asking questions about problems? Do they say, when is it going to be fixed? Or do they say, what's the process you're going through? What have you done so far? And how do you know you're on the right track? Give them those questions to ask. When people's leaders start asking those questions about our problems is when we create some time and space for problem solving. There was one other thing I wanted to say in the chat, and that was, Kathy says, this was interesting, but how do the 25% poll respondents do that when they say they have no influence in the process? It's a great question. And the short answer is, if you have no influence, the only thing you can do is try it yourself. It isn't a magic wand. And so if you don't have influence and you have a problem you need to solve, you may end up having to do a stakeholder analysis yourself and start trying to use other people's influence to get partnerships involved, and start teaming with other people to be able to do something like this. Otherwise, you're going to feel like you're just swimming upstream, which is not a fun thing to do, right? So you may have to work on the stakeholder piece of it and getting some allies before you can actually get into the problem solving mode. It's not probably what you want to hear, but to me, that's the reality of it. Other questions, those are good ones.
I think too, using some vocabulary, just trying to get some consistent vocabulary. So I thought it was interesting you used the word containment. Like, even if you just on your own started saying to somebody like, well, that will contain the problem for now, but like, so just making statements like that might get people thinking in a different direction. I just, on your problem solving chart, I was like, just to get our organization all using that same vocabulary so that we were aware if we were fixing or solving and raising awareness on the different levels, that would be helpful.
That's a great comment. Just even starting with do we want to contain this, or do we want to, put a fix in, or do we actually want to solve it? And those are different things. And just starting to bring that awareness, as you said, Beth, and maybe use some of the words. That is a way to start. Absolutely. Any other questions or comments? Well, then I'm going to turn it. Oops, one more. Are the slides available to attendees? Beth, I'm not sure about that.
We do not, for free webinars, make the slides available. This recording will become available on our website at some point. It usually takes us 2 to 3 weeks to make that happen, but you could go watch it again, I guess, is your option.
And I'm going to leave this to Beth to wrap up, and I'm going to put myself on mute. And thank you, everyone, for attending. Yeah.
Do you have one last slide with contact information, perhaps?
Oh, I do. Thank you, Beth. There you go.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for attending today. Our website is not currently caught up with all the things that Christine has to offer your organization. So as I said, she teaches leadership, project management. Today's slide presentation is an abbreviation from a course that we call Problem Solving, Remedy for the Quick Fix. And the beauty when Christine comes to your organization is that we would incorporate your actual authentic problems as we went through the process. You would get a chance to use them. And Christine also does project management. And if you're interested in any of that, please contact me through our website. And if you're a Metro State employee, please tell your friends and family and spread the word about our great programming that we have available for your friends and families organizations.